Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're talking about a story that's been circulating for the last few days, and that is that Republican Steve Bannon, according to an article, was reportedly interested in a 2028 presidential run. Now in this article by Fox News, we do have some updates on this news that is pretty interesting. So the backstory here is Daily Mail did a report from insider sources that said that Steve Bannon was reportedly seeking a political advice for a White House bid in 2028. Now, after the report from the Daily Mail, which well-placed sources said that Bannon was considering a 2028 run, the former chief strategist of President Trump gave a two-word response, saying Trump 2028. Bannon said in response to a report he's seeking political advice for a potential run. The report claimed that Bannon had privately disparaged Vice President JD Vance, considered the top Republican for 2028, that he would be too soft to run for presidency, and he's not tough enough to run in 2028. However, President Trump recently this week spoke for JD Vance and said that he would like him as most likely to be his successor, adding that Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio would make a very formidable ticket, though it was too early to discuss the matter. I think JD Vance would be a great nominee if he decides he wants to do that, Rubio said during an interview with Fox's own Laura Trump. Now, Bannon's two-word response was published by the conservative news outlet The National Pulse, which blasted the Daily Mail for the thinly sourced story and argued the article was an effort to drive division within the Republican Party. Bannon told Politico back in March that, quote, all I do is back President Trump and try to move the populist agenda and the America First agenda. I don't think like a politician. Bannon also described the notion of him running for president as, quote, absurd. In April, Bannon told News Nation that there are many different alternatives that could permit Trump to sidestep constitutional term limits, noting in an interview the same month that we, quote, have a team looking at these alternatives. So this is interesting because Bannon is certainly a very outspoken figure in the more MAGA wing of the Republican Party. And JD Vance right now, when you look at the early polling for 2028, it's certainly very clear that JD Vance starts out as a leader in the Republican primary and the leader to be the next Republican nominee. Steve Bannon, which he says in the article that he does not have any interest in running for president in 2028, and taking him at his word, I would say he's probably not going to run, and even if he did, it would probably not go all that well, as JD Vance has a massive lead over the Republican primary thus far at 49.1%. In second place, it's Donald Trump Jr., who is a close friend of JD Vance, who has given no indication that he wants to run for president in 2028. And then in third place, it's Florida Governor Ron DeSantis at 10.7%. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, is then in fourth with 8.6%, and he has already essentially said he would not run against JD Vance in a primary if Vance decided to run. So the Republican field for 2028 is kind of shaping up very early on, but it's also kind of already set. With JD Vance, depending on how the White House and the Trump administration are doing, Vance is very likely to be the Republican nominee if he runs, and there's a very good chance that Marco Rubio could potentially be JD Vance's vice presidential pick. So someone like Steve Bannon, if he did decide to run, while obviously it would get a lot of publicity due to Bannon's very outspoken persona and a lot of attention-grabbing statements, the actual prospect of Bannon defeating Vance in a Republican primary is literally next to zero. And if Bannon did find a way to make it to the general election, I think the chances of him winning that would probably be even lower than him winning the Republican primary. Bannon's not someone that would really be able to get a lot of voters out to vote for him in the same way that JD Vance did. Now, Bannon also mentioned, he responded by saying Trump 2028 in response to that. And again, this has been going on social media for a while now. And as the article mentioned, I will just mention this very briefly just to tell you what this was. The article reported it, that 3 days after Trump's 2025 inauguration, Representative Andy Ogles of Tennessee introduced a constitutional amendment that would allow the president to serve a third and final term. According to Congress.gov, that proposal was referred to the House Judiciary Committee, but has received no further consideration thus far. Now, the official Trump store is continuing to sell Trump 2028 merchandise, but again, the constitutionality of President Trump running for another term in 2028 is you cannot run for a third consecutive term as President of the United States. To do that, you would have to change the Constitution and pass a constitutional amendment to do so. And given that for that to happen, a lot of states would have to vote in support that are currently anti-President Trump by a pretty considerable amount. The prospects of that happening are essentially zero, dead on arrival, not going to happen. President Trump, if he really wanted to run in 2028, he could try and challenge it in the legal system, but again, the odds of him winning that are super, super low. And Trump has even recently admitted that he probably will not run in 2028 using his own words. Now, ultimately, I think he will not run, and I think JD Vance will end up running in 2028, but Trump is not going to be able to probably run in 2028 like he said. Now, Steve Bannon, if he does not believe JD Vance is tough enough to be the Republican nominee and decides to run against Vance, he certainly has every right to do that, as Bannon's never been president before, so there's nothing legally stopping him from running, unlike Trump. But Bannon would have basically no shot in the Republican primary at beating Vance, and in the general election, he would have even less of a chance. So I thought this was a very interesting news article to talk about, because when you look at the early Republican polls, so far it has not really been close. The most recent Atlas Intel poll, which was the most accurate poll from the 2024 presidential election, got pretty much every single swing state and its exact margin of victories correct, has JD Vance already around 58% in the Republican primary. Ron DeSantis is in second place with 13.2%, Marco Rubio is in third with 9.7%, Donald Trump Jr., the president's eldest son, is 4.6%, Vivek Ramaswamy is 1.8%, and then 12.8% say they support other candidates. So already JD Vance is a very commanding lead and is already breaking 50% of the vote in the Republican primary. Echelon Insights, a little less support for Vance, but again similar. He's at 42%, Rubio has 7%, Vivek has 4%, RFK Jr. has 5%, Nikki Haley 6%, Ron DeSantis 9%, and then 8% others, 16% undecided. But again, it's clear JD Vance starts out as the clear Republican favorite. You can go down every single poll that's been taken on the Republican side thus far, and they've all pretty much shown that JD Vance is the leader. The only one that may have changed that was the JL Partners poll for back in April, which said if Donald Trump was able to run for a third term in 2028, how would he do? And in this one, Trump would have 39% and Vance would have 19%. Now, again, I made it very clear that Donald Trump will not be running for a third term in 2028. The Constitution does not allow him to do that. But even if Trump did decide to run for a third term and was legally allowed to, JD Vance would not run against Trump in the primary. He would likely run again as his vice president. So the Trump versus Vance Republican primary that Democrats would probably be hoping for, is that could probably fracture the Republican Party by a pretty considerable amount, would likely never even happen, as that certainly would not really be a realistic scenario. But for 2028, Steve Bannon sounds like he is not going to run in 2028, but saying Trump 2028 at very least could be looked at as leaving the door open that Bannon is not 100% sold on JD Vance being the Republican candidate. Maybe he does decide to make a presidential run that hopes to catch media attention, and then will probably drop out after either Iowa or New Hampshire, having no real chance at actually winning. It's an interesting idea, but again, he said Trump 2028, that's not going to happen. It's going to be JD Vance in all likelihood for 2028, and then how that all goes remains to be seen. Now, on the Democratic side, obviously right now the Democratic primary is completely wide open for 2028, but by some miracle, whoever the Democrats nominate, if they had to face off against Steve Bannon, you could pretty much bet everything that 2028 would be a very big Democratic resurgence in 2028, and the Democrats would win back the White House after 4 years of Republicans holding it. Now, I may be doing a Steve Bannon presidential election prediction in the next few days or so. I haven't decided yet if I will be doing that, but that could be a video I may be doing. Make sure to leave a comment below if you would like to see that, and which Democrat you would like to see me have face off against Steve Bannon in that prediction. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to hit like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in a future video.